Watch the ride.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5. If you didn't see episode 4 in this episode, we just have to get the oil change done and put the bodywork back on, and this bike is done. We are now back on our own 2 tyres. There we go. As I need to give this an oil change, I need a block of wood so it can sit more upright. I've also charged the battery, so hopefully this time it will start and I can run it up a bit to let it warm up, and then I can dump the oil out. You gonna start? Come on, Derek. Why? Sure, schmocky. Cool. Well, that's just warmed it up a little bit. So I'll let it now settle, and then I'm going to drop the oil. So I've got the oil tray ready to drop the oil, but first I should explain what a dry sump bike is, and the DRZ 400 SM is a dry sump. Most bikes aren't like this, so I'm going to explain how they work. Normal motorcycles, engines, will be a contained unit. You know, you put oil in the side of the engine, it sits in the bottom of it, it gets flung around and used, and then you drain it out the bottom. It has all of its oil inside the engine. But where this is intended to be used off-road, you don't want that quantity of oil flinging around everywhere inside the engine. So you keep most of it outside of the engine. And that's done with a dry sump setup where the oil is stored in the frame. So my oil filler is that on the side of the frame. There is a tube around here that connects to it. And there is another tube at the bottom down here that connects that way to the engine. So the oil, most of the oil sits in that tank and it flows into the engine and gets used. The oil pump pumps it around the engine and back up into the tank. So even though you put nearly 2 litres of oil in this bike, most of it is not in the engine at any one time. And for that reason, you have multiple places to drain the oil. You do have the standard sump plug, but you also have that nut there. Hopefully you can see, it's in focus. That is the drain plug for the actual tank. Oh, you can see the rust issue. But also note that if you take off the belly pan and everything, you can get down to the hose that goes into the engine here. If you unscrew that, there is a mesh filter, which is also there and needs cleaning periodically. I cleaned that when I did this engine last, so I don't need to worry about that. I am, however, taking the oil filter off, so I need to take this cover off. And you also have this bolt here, which allows you to drain the oil out there. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to undo is the sump plug, which is a 14mm. There you go, I got you a better angle. Thankfully this wasn't too tight, but that's because I do it up to the right sort of torque. Maintain pressure on the bolt. No! That's exactly what I didn't want to happen. Oh, you son of a... I'm sure most of you know what just happened. The sump plug went into the oil box, and what odds have I of reaching it with a screwdriver with a magnet on? Yes! People have got a thing about sump plugs. They like talking about the dirty bits at the end. There's nothing shiny here. There's a little bit of, you know, magnetic grime, but that's quite normal. There's no big shards of anything. So then what you would do is wait till most of the oil drips out the engine, and then put the drips on the corner of your collection area of the tray, and then undo this one. Same scenario, try and keep pressure on it. Try not to drop it in the thing, but now this never used to be in the way that much. There we go. Oh, no! Close. This is pretty good for a DRZ oil change. Then you undo the top one. Then you undo the top one. And now this is when more oil can come out because, well, it lets the air through, but that's already pretty open. And your dipsticks on there. Then we're going to undo these. And notice how these aren't tight. It's literally, I don't know, it's about a pound or two's force on my hand there. These don't need much force. And they will stay in place forever. Just about catching this oil too. As you see, it just gets everywhere. There's the O-ring. Take the old filter out. So now we're dripping from 3 places. No, you don't. Aha. As if that wasn't enough places to be dripping oil, there's also this one that helps you drain the tubes around the oil filter. There we go. Another piece of wood under it so it is absolutely bolt upright. I've tied a rope onto the handlebar on the opposite side to something heavy so it can't fall this way. And now I've just got to leave that to drip and let all of the oil come out of the bike. So let's give it a bit. Okay, I let that drip for about 20 minutes or so. So now I can put all of the bungs and plugs back in. Just put the sump plug back in. Always start these bolts by hand because you won't mess up the threads. If you're just using finger tension, you can't. And you absolutely don't want to mess the threads up in an engine casing. I've also replaced the copper crush washers because I have some spare ones. The other ones, they're okay. It looked a little bit squished. You'll note on the oil filter is an O-ring which is stuck to it. That's because there's a little spigot inside here which takes that O-ring. And I've got a new one of those. Of course, I've got to give massive thanks to wemoto.com for sponsoring this build and supplying parts like these O-rings and, where is it? The new oil filter. Check out wemoto.com to buy your parts and stuff. I do when I'm not working with them. O-ring goes over the little tube. Open up our new oil filter. And I've got new oil that I'm putting in the bike and I'm going to pour a little bit on the inside. A bit on the outside. And just let it sort of soak in a bit. May not need to do this, but I was always taught to do it because it, in the words I was told, it helps prime the filter so it absorbs oil so it can take it quicker and pass it through so your engine doesn't get starved at any point. Now, I don't think that's actually going to happen. By the time we've got this back together, it's going to have soaked through, but it can't hurt. So there we go, soaked up. Let me pop that in there. It's not held, it's just the oil that's holding it there. Get out. Oil up the O-ring itself. So you make sure the O-ring's properly in its little groove and then push that on. Do these up a little bit at a time. Can't find the torque specs for these on the actual list. So I'm going to do them just so. As it turns out, Suzuki don't actually spec a torque for that. People are just saying nip it up. No one can seem to find a figure. Right, but I can find figures for the other ones I've done. So everything's done up now, we can just put oil back in the bike. And as I mentioned, the oil fill hole is up here on the frame. And as you can see where it is, it's a bit of an annoying place. Thankfully, this oil does come with a nice little spout that makes it a lot easier. But recently, I bought a cheap 3D printer and I'm learning to 3D print and someone's made this, and whoever made this, I love you. It's a funnel with a breather hole that's got threads in it, and it threads, oh look at that, perfectly in. Honestly, I've been following 3D printing for a very long time and I've been learning up to the level of people who own the machines before I ever thought about actually buying one, just because I really wanted to know about the technology. And now I've got it, well, it's so much easier to learn to do something when you've already learned all the nomenclature and the little bits and pieces that you need to know. The flow rate. Honestly, whoever designed this and put it onto Thingiverse, I love you. There was also a little tool to help with draining the oil so it wouldn't go everywhere. It's like a little guide. That doesn't fit in any way that I can work out, so yeah. But this is good. Now, what I'm about to say, you shouldn't apply without knowledge of the bike you're working on. But if a bike has a dry sump, you don't have to be quite as careful with the amount of oil in the bike because it isn't inside the engine as much. So you can actually have, you could have half a litre of oil missing. The engine would still have the same amount of oil. It would just be how much is in the tank. Obviously, that oil's getting worked more. There could be a starvation issue at some point, but if that header tank has got oil in it, in theory, as long as it's returning at the same rate as pumping through, it's not going to run down. Point being, this is only really supposed to take about 1800. I'm going to put most of this 2 litres of oil in it, and then I'm going to test the level, see where it's at, and then top it up if I need to. But I know that I only need to leave, 200 mils of oil in this bottle and it'll be fine. Probably may even need all of it with the new oil filter. Because I think they generally say for little filters like that about 100 mils in soak up. Okay, so before I try and start the bike, I'm going to just clean up this oily mess underneath. This wasn't the cleanest one I've ever done. There have been better. Using 2 separate containers really is the ultimate answer here, but oh well, I'll deal with it. You see that? Look how clean it is. This is one of the benefits of having plywood on your garage floors. If you drop things on it, it's not a concrete floor. You can screw things down to it. And once it's absorbed all the oil it's going to absorb, it's probably never going to rot. And any oil that does go on it kind of just sits on the surface. Bit of white spirit, wipe it over with an old cloth, and it doesn't even look shiny. In fact, I've just cleaned a patch. Good tip. Anyway, dipstick back in. And the way you check the oil on this bike is you have to run it for 3 minutes, let it stand for 3 minutes, and then you can take an oil reading. And I think you're supposed to do that with it as upright as possible. I'm going to do that because with this side stand and the way this bike's been jacked up, it really sits over one side, more than usual. Right, I'm just going to have to go and check Reno's on her lunch break, and I'm not about to disturb her work with a thumping 440cc single-cylinder engine. So I've got to start it and leave it to run for 3 minutes, but do not rev it. Other than starting it. Maybe just a tiny bit of choke. Please don't die. Don't worry, the garage door's open and I'm outside. Wait 3 minutes. Been up to much lately? Alright. I'll slice it. Okay, that's not working as I hoped. But if I look between these layers, it's one shiny thing there. It's very, very small. Pull a tiny little shinies. Maybe it's a bit piston ring, maybe it's a bit of God knows what. It's been in here probably too long, to be fair. Right, so it's been 3 minutes, so I can undo this. Lift it out, clean it up, and then you put it back in. You don't thread it in, you just push it down and then lift it back out. And we are, see this? Bang on the very top of the line. Perfect. Again, not surprised. With a bike that has to have an oil change every 1500 miles-ish, you get used to doing these things. Also, another really good tip with this cap, or any cap that's plastic, push it down, turn it backwards until you feel it click, because that will be the threads popping over each other. And when you feel that click there, turn it the other way, gently, and you'll never cross-thread a plastic screw in your life. Also, you do this up, like, you know, finger nipped, and then when you go to undo it, it'll be like the Hulk did it up. Right, well, I can see my coolant. in the turkey baster expansion replacement. If you want to know more about that, there is an entire video on it. That means I can see it's blue and clear and lovely looking. So I'm not worried about that. Oil's done. Everything else is done. Whack the fairings and the seat back on. DR done. Oh yes, DR done. Right, so that plastic goes there. This one goes here. And the airbox lid goes on. And then we've got to do like a systems check. Indicate why. This indicator is being intermittent, and that's because these bullet connectors here. So I'm going to fix those, but everything else appears to be working. Okay, why is that on permanently now? Okay, so what's happened with the rear brake is I didn't put the switch back in exactly the right place, so I just need to adjust it with the bolt. There's a bolt that always presses down on the switch, and when it releases, that's when the brake light goes on. So that's why I need to make sure this is always pressing. And it's impossible to show you down here. As it turns out, this is actually an extension, so it doesn't really matter what I do to it. I'm getting this through its MOT. I didn't replace the rear indicators like I wanted to. Time is running out. I need to get onto the XJ6. But it's fine. It's going to be fine. That's why I'm doing this. Now, you can see the cables from the indicators are really small. That's not normal. This is because of cheap eBay Chinesium. There is a way of making those fit better in a bullet connector though, if it's a little bit small. And that is tin them up. Black to black, red to red. Are they now working? Yes. Cool. Okay, so let's try that again. Left indicator, yes, yes. Right indicator, yes, and yes. Front brake, yes. Rear brake, yes. Tail light illumination, yes. Headlight, yes. High beam, yes. Low beam, yes. And that's it on this bike, because there's no hazards or anything like that. Oh, pass light work? Yes. Horn? Oh, it's so cute. I forgot I put this horn in it. You're not going to hear it over the engine anyway, so it's just a cute little one. It's like a... So there we go. The DRZ is ready for its MOT. I realised I haven't done the final check to see if the movement in the swing arm has gone yet, because obviously I checked it when it was off the ground, but not with the wheel and everything in. So let's just do it, because this is what they're going to do in the MOT. If this lifts up, it's going to be an advisory again. I hope it's not, because then it wouldn't have been worth doing all this. Come on. Oh yes. Oh yes. It's solid. That's great. And then... Yeah. Yeah. And with that, it brings us to the end of Motorcycle Maintenance 2024 /DRZ/ episode 5 finale. The next video is Motorcycle Maintenance / XJ6 episode 1. We've got to do the same thing with the XJ6. Well, not the same thing. I know I need to change the clutch cable. I know I need to change the clutch and the oil. Coolant should be fine, and the tyres. So it's going to be a case of getting it in here, getting it up on the stands, getting the wheels off. Is there any reason to not do that? No, I can do the clutch with it on stands. And of course that will entail an email to wemoto.com to ask them for more parts to help me with my bikes. They are amazing. As I say, I use them whether they're sponsoring me or not. If you need a part, they've more than likely got it. The shipping's really fast, the prices are fair. Check them out. Well, there you go. If you enjoyed this first part of the series, please do like the video, hit the like button, you know what I'm trying to say. Subscribe if you're new here, and if you'd like to help support this build, and I would really appreciate that, because I'm not going to get a sponsor for my tyres, so I've got to dig deep for tyre money. I would appreciate that. And you can do that monthly through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and there's loads of benefits to that, as well as getting into my Discord. You can do it through PayPal as a one-off thing. You can buy a t-shirt, buy a sticker, buy a key tag, keychain. There's a million ways to support me, as well as just watching and liking the videos. And I would appreciate it. As I say, I massively appreciate the support. Anyway, to the next one. Take care.